So the question is, could Lisandro Martinez be the solution to Ruben Amorim's midfield problems? Well, my answer would be no, and that is specific to Amorim's system, as I do think Lisandro Martinez could function in a midfield three or a midfield double pivot with a player ahead, depending on the players around him. However, the thing with Amorim's system, specifically the midfield double pivot, is that it requires a lot of ground coverage and also the ability to defend 1v1 in big open spaces, because we often see Bruno Fernandes alongside Casemiro starting off as a midfield double pivot, but in pressing situations either as a trigger press from the middle third or just when pressing the opposition's build-up phase in their defensive third, Bruno Fernandes will push further forward in line with the two interior forwards behind Sesko in order to allow United to press man for man but also have a vertically compact pressing shape at the top. And so as a result, Casemiro is often left with massive amounts of space in central midfield, which he struggles with on his own, but I think Martinez would struggle even more because at least Casemiro has the experience of positional wise being able to move across, and at this point he's played under Amorim for about 10 months and so he's well versed with this system. If you put Martinez in there, he's not going to be the player who does what Bruno Fernandes does, which is push up into the press. He would have to be the player behind. And so in Amorim's system specifically, I really can't see how Martinez can function there, simply because he lacks the 1v1 defending ability in space, which we've seen against players like Salah when he's isolated in 1v1s. As in general, he's just a much better box defender when he's actually concentrating, because he does go through blips where he makes weird positional errors, doesn't pick up players, which has led to goals, particularly last season. In general, you'd have to say that when it comes to defending as a centre-back, Martinez is far better when he's defending centrally, either when he's pushing up from the midfield line to apply pressure to a player who's dropped off in behind United's midfield double pivot. He's very good at getting out front foot, being aggressive and making a tackle, or in deeper areas around his own box where his ability to throw himself into tackles and that South American aggression, which sometimes does lead to him making errors, particularly jumping into challenges too early and just either giving away a free kick needlessly and getting a yellow or a red card, or just completely selling himself and getting run past. That aggression and front foot nature and even naivety in and around box situations where there's a lot of players around him and the space can't be exploited if he's bypassed, this is where his pitbull mentality can be seen to full effect and where his best moments do come from. But before I get into that, if you want to check out any cheap, good quality football jerseys, go over to okjersey.com. They've got a variety of different current season and retro jerseys, including the new season Manchester United jerseys, available for just $15. Here are some of the alternative Manchester United jerseys from this season that they sent me over, alongside some unique retro jerseys that they've got on the site as well. You can also get free delivery for all orders over $50, and if you use code Atlantis at checkout, you will get a discount as well. So I'll leave a link in the description and in the comment section below. But the issue with putting him in central midfield doesn't just come from out of possession in the press, because you could argue that when United are defending deeper, especially now that we've moved to more of a 4-4-2 defensive shape in the middle third, or at least we did against Sunderland, that Martinez could be covered adequately. Now you could definitely make that argument, as I could see Martinez playing in central midfield, but my question would be, what is the actual benefit to him, but also the team as a whole, to playing him there rather than say Casemiro, Ugarte, Mainu, or even Bruno Fernandes, depending on who he partners? Well, to be honest, in my opinion, I don't really see much benefit to either. See, from Martinez's point of view individually, if you look at the areas of the pitch and the positions that he would be picking up the ball in possession, playing as a central midfielder, I really don't think they suit his best attributes. See, Martinez's best attributes in possession is when it comes to him playing passes, not him receiving the ball with his back to goal. He's one of our best players when it comes to threading incisive passes, splitting the midfield and finding players between the lines. And so therefore, in the middle third, you want him receiving the ball facing goal, not having to receive the ball with his back to goal and turn away from a pressing player, because also I don't think he's that nimble. I think Mainu's far better in this area in terms of his close ball control under pressure, whereas Martinez is going to be better either as the central centre-back or as the left-sided centre-back, where he can receive the ball in a bit of space, get it out of his feet, and either find that pass between the lines, play the ball up the line, or use his longer passing range to switch play to the other side and change the point of attack or find a runner in behind the back line. And so at least in terms of settled possession in the middle third, even if you were going to use Martinez in the midfield double pivot initially and use some player rotation, you'd still want him in the same position that he's picking up when he's playing as a left-sided centre-back. But also in the build-up phase, when you actually look at what is required of the central midfielders in that double pivot, I still don't think it suits Martinez better than either a left-sided centre-back or a central centre-back role. And this is because your midfield double pivot do have to be prepared to spin the player on their back that's man-to-man pressing them in order to take advantage of the space in behind. And this just isn't suited to Martinez's game. He's far better suited to being the player that's receiving the ball in the back three with the goalkeeper facing forward and basically being what I call a server, someone who's going to thread the initial pass either through the centre ideally, play it long or maybe go out wide, which is where we've seen him play for both Amorim and Ten Hag in the build-up phase. However, he could be used as the central centre-back instead of De Ligt, and this is because a central centre-back in this phase of play is basically playing the sort of role that you'd expect a creative deeper line midfielder to play, such as a Rodri, Busquets and Adam Wharton, someone who's going to be able to receive the ball with their back to goal and have the press resistance to be able to turn and spin away or bounce passes either side. Now, even when Ruben Amorim initially came in, I could see the central centre-back being a problem right from the start. And if you go back to my transfer windows, probably when the season hadn't even ended yet, maybe right at the start of the summer, one of the players I suggested was Leonardo Balerdi, and it was for this exact reason. See, De Ligt is pretty decent when playing those bounce passes, but he's definitely not ideal. Just not having the natural fluidity that a central midfielder would have in this area, and that's why I'm confused as to why Amorim is so insistent on the central centre-back of all players in that system pushing forward to the edge of the box. Surely it would make more sense to have Mainu, Bruno Fernandes, even someone like Dalot receiving the ball with their back to goal, simply because if you look at our central centre-back options, Harry Maguire or De Ligt, or really most centre-backs in general, they're not going to be press resistant with their back to goal. And so it is strange to have the central centre-back in that position, but if you are going to have a central centre-back there, I think Martinez would be of a lot more benefit than De Ligt, simply because whilst he's not the most press resistant player, in terms of being able to receive the ball in like an Adam Wharton or a Frankie de Jong being able to smoothly turn away from pressure and drive forward, he does have more press resistance than De Ligt, and he's going to be more comfortable dropping off, receiving the ball in slightly different areas where De Ligt probably isn't comfortable receiving it or where the goalkeeper isn't comfortable playing it. And so with Lisandro Martinez's higher technical competence compared with De Ligt, this is going to allow United to connect patterns of play that they otherwise wouldn't be able to, such as either playing that bounce pass from the goalkeeper into Martinez out to one of the wide centre-backs, which takes the pressing forward out of the game, giving the wide centre-back the space to then carry the ball into, where from the opposition's either going to look to drop off in order to protect the space, allowing the wide centre-back to then carry the ball out of the defensive third, or if they look to extend that man-to-man press by pushing someone forward from the midfield line to apply pressure to the wide centre-back, now there's space further up the pitch for United to exploit. However, if you're using De Ligt there who isn't comfortable receiving the ball as frequently throughout a game as Lisandro Martinez is, let alone just connecting the play when they do actually receive the ball, and your goalkeeper and centre-backs aren't confident in playing that pass to the edge of the box, you end up doing what United are doing currently, which is just going long straight from the goalkeeper, not even trying to play out from the back, or doing what we were doing most of last season and throughout the start of this season, which is building out through the wide centre-backs, eventually being forced wide to the wing-backs, getting boxed in, and then having to rely on low probability long balls into the centre forward, which the majority of the time, even with a player like Sesko who's pretty good aerially, is going to result in a lot of turnovers, which is going to reduce the control you have of the game. And if the opposition are a side that do want to assert dominance through controlling possession, you're just giving the ball back to them, and this is going to enable them to sustain attacks, periods of pressure, and ultimately this is what's going to lose you games over the course of a full season, because the more time you're defending, the less time you're attacking, there's just more opportunities for your defenders to make mistakes, compared with the top teams who keep the ball a lot, which reduces the amount of opportunities that their defenders have to actually make mistakes, or at least making mistakes in and around their own box and defensive third, where they're more likely to lead to goals. So whether it's in the build-up phase, sitting on the edge of the box, receiving the ball and linking play with his back to goal, or further up the pitch in the middle third during settled possession, sitting in the deepest part of the possession shape, which is in the back three, either at left-sided centre-back or in this case as the central centre-back, where he's receiving the ball facing goal and can be the server actually playing those passes, not just into the midfield double pivot, but also finding players between the lines, is where he's at his optimal in both of those areas. And so there's really no reason to put him into central midfield, particularly with the vulnerabilities that I talked about in terms of him being able to cover ground, and in particular in transitional situations where he's going to have to defend 1v1s in a large amount of space, which is where he already struggles. And so in and out of possession, I think he's better in the back line, maybe not as a left-sided centre-back where he's more likely to be drawn into wider positions, but definitely as that central centre-back, specifically in the build-up phase. Because as we've seen with Amorim even abandoning playing out of pressure and just going long, that's probably United's biggest tactical weakness at the moment, being able to play out of high pressure, taking advantage of the space in behind the opposition's high midfield line, then allowing players like Cunha, Bruno Fernandes, Mason Mount, or even runners from wing-back like Dorgu or Ahmad to transition the artificial counter-attack, giving us more quick transitional attacks throughout the course of a game, which is definitely something that would suit Mbumo and should lead to higher value goal-scoring opportunities. Because when you look at where most of our best chances come from, it is on the transition, and so if you add in a build-up phase with someone like Martinez, and this enables you to play through pressure, you now don't have to play these long passes relying on winning loose balls after turnovers. Instead, you can create your own quick transitional attacks. And so for me, if you're putting Martinez into central midfield, you really don't get a lot of benefit. I think Mainoo, Casemiro, Agate as well are all better there. But I think as a central centre-back defensively, maybe you could say aerially inside of the box, that could be an issue. But I would argue his aerial ability may be more of an issue as a left-sided centre-back. At the near post he's fine, however when the ball is on the other side and Martinez has to defend the back post, this is where opposition sides are going to target us. However, use him centrally, exchanging a fullback like Luke Shaw for what effectively is a defensive midfielder in Martinez, and put Euro and De Ligt either side, well, you've now got the protection aerially from those type of situations, but you've also not now got the vulnerability further up the pitch in the rest defence. Now at central centre-back rather than left-sided centre-back, far less likely to be drawn into wider positions and having to defend open space in 1v1s against quick attackers. And so in the build-up phase, United improve. In the middle third during settled possession, nothing really changes about Martinez's game. He's still able to do what he does best, but from a defensive point of view, I'd argue maybe in the defensive third, he's just as good if not better, but certainly higher up the pitch, he is going to be better in those central areas compared to when he's out wide. And so from a team and individual perspective, I think moving Martinez not to central midfield, but instead to that central centre-back position, playing as a libero, potentially also stepping up in possession or during the press when needed as well, is probably United's best option. So let me know if you agree with my analysis on Martinez. Do you think he's better as a central centre-back or in central midfield? And if you want to check out any cheap, good quality football jerseys, go over to okjersey.com. You can use code Atlantis at checkout for a discount, so I'll leave it linked in the description and in the comments section below.